The first time Mr. Larkin calls her a liar, it is not in private. It is over a microphone. In front of 3 judges, 200 parents, a gym full of students, and the robot she built with her own hands. Nia Brooks is standing beside 6 feet of aluminum, wiring, and sleepless nights when her engineering teacher leans toward the table, folds his arms, and says loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Let's not embarrass ourselves by pretending this is your work. Because this is not just some classroom project anymore. This is the State Robotics Invitational. There is a scholarship on the line. A paid summer internship on the line. A future on the line." And now, in front of everybody who ever doubted a girl like her belonged in engineering in the first place, the one adult who is supposed to back her is telling the room she is a fraud. Nia does not cry. Not there. Not when the judges glance at one another. Not when somebody in the back whispers, "I knew it." Not even when Mr. Larkin taps the robot's metal frame with one finger and says, "A sophomore did not build adaptive balance controls from scrap parts in a 1-bedroom apartment. Let's be serious." She just grips the edge of the table until her knuckles go white. Because the worst part is not the accusation. The worst part is that if she cannot prove him wrong in the next few minutes, everybody in that gym is going to remember him as the honest one. And her as the girl who lied in public. What none of them know yet is that the robot is about to answer the only question that matters. But before that happens, Nia has to survive the humiliation first. Her robot is named Maxine. Not because that sounds like a machine, because it sounds like her grandmother. Her grandma Maxine used to say that if the world keeps trying to make you small, then build something so useful nobody can ignore you. Nia hears that sentence in her head almost every night while soldering under the kitchen light. She hears it when the landlord bangs on the ceiling because the drill is too loud. She hears it when the power strip sparks, and she has to choose between charging her laptop and running the test motors. She hears it when her mother, Denise, comes home from the late shift at Mercy Ridge Care Center, kicks off her shoes, sees the mess of circuit boards on the table, and says, exhausted but smiling, "Tell me what she can do now." With a girl who is good at physics, better at code, and old enough to know that being called gifted means nothing if nobody gives you a door. Nia does not come from the kind of school people expect to win robotics competitions. Mason Technical Academy sounds impressive until you walk into it. The roof leaks over the old CAD room. Half the printers work. The robotics team has exactly 1 battery pack that does not overheat and a cabinet full of donation parts from schools that upgraded years ago. The schools that usually win have sponsors. Their students show up in matching jackets. They arrive with polished machines, laser-cut frames, and parents who know what internships to mention in casual conversation. Nia shows up with a backpack full of notebooks and a bus pass with a crack down the center. That would be enough for some people to underestimate her. But Mr. Larkin has other reasons. Officially, he is the advanced engineering instructor and faculty advisor for robotics. In practice, he is the kind of teacher who already knows who he thinks is brilliant before they open their mouths. There is a whole language adults speak without admitting it. Nia learned that language early. Freshman year, she answered a calculus question Mr. Larkin said only seniors usually solved. He blinked, smiled tightly, and said, "Good guess." When she explained the steps, he said, "Who showed you that?" Not, "How did you figure it out?" "Who showed you?" Same semester, Caleb Mercer, tall, loud, already treated like some startup founder in training, gave the wrong answer to a coding problem, and got told he was thinking creatively. Nia gave the right answer and got asked whether she copied from a forum. That is the thing about unfairness. It is rarely dramatic at first. It is death by 1,000 shrugs. 1,000 little moments where somebody tells you, without using the words, exactly where they think you belong. So Nia stops raising her hand, unless she has to. She stops correcting people when they call her surprisingly articulate. She starts saving every notebook page, every line of code, every revision log, because something in her already understands a brutal rule of life. Some people get believed. Other people have to document everything. By sophomore year, the state invitational is announced. The challenge is simple on paper and nasty in real life. Build a robot capable of navigating unstable terrain while locating and retrieving a weighted emergency package from a simulated disaster zone. It is exactly the kind of problem Nia loves because it is not about making something flashy. It is about making something that works when conditions get ugly. The winning team gets a $10,000 scholarship award distributed among team members, plus a summer placement with Halcyon Robotics. For kids in richer districts, that sounds impressive. For Nia, it sounds like rent relief for her mother, tuition money, and one solid line on an application that no one can wave away. Mr. Larkin immediately starts talking about Caleb. Nia sits in the back, listening, while sketching suspension geometry in the margin of her notes. Then Mr. Larkin says the project slots are limited. Only 3 school entries. 1 official team entry, 1 duo, and 1 individual prototype if approved. Approval is at faculty discretion. That means him. You already know what that means. Caleb gets the team entry before the forms are even printed. A pair of seniors with donor parents get the duo slot. And when Nia submits her proposal for an individual adaptive rescue bot built from recycled components, Mr. Larkin looks at the page for maybe 7 seconds before saying, "This is too ambitious. Try something smaller." Smaller. It lands like an insult because both of them know what he means. Not smaller budget. Not smaller scope. Smaller dream. She asks, what part of the proposal is unrealistic? He says, all of it. Self-stabilization, terrain learning, modular arm response, that's graduate-level work. Nia says, then I'll learn it. And for the first time that year, Mr. Larkin actually looks annoyed. He leans back and says, confidence is not the same thing as competence. Now, if you are Nia, there are 2 ways to hear that. One is as feedback. The other is as a challenge. She hears the second one. But what happens next is exactly why nobody saw her coming. She gets home and finds a notice taped to the apartment mailbox. Her mother is behind on 1 utility payment. Not enough to be a crisis yet. Enough to make Denise stand very still while reading it twice. Enough to make Nia quietly take the paper from her, fold it, and say, I'm going to win that scholarship. Denise gives her a look mothers give when they love you too much to let hope become a drug. Baby, she says gently, don't build your whole heart around one maybe. But Nia already has. She does not say that part out loud. Instead, she pulls out her sketchbook, flips to a clean page, and writes 3 words at the top. Build it anyway. That becomes the rule. She starts building with what nobody else wanted. Broken parts. Leftovers. Scrap. At the Maker Lab on Jefferson Street, an old volunteer named Mrs. Talbot teaches her how to salvage bearings without warping the housings. A retired mechanic lets her dig through bins for usable steel rods. Her best friend Zara, who knows almost nothing about robotics but everything about keeping people sane, starts bringing grape soda and saying things like, you look 1 dramatic violin away from becoming a documentary. That makes Nia laugh when she needs it most. Because the build is not glamorous. It is frustrating. The first version of Maxine topples sideways trying to pivot. The second version overcorrects so violently it drives itself into a wall. The third manages 3 clean steps over loose bricks, and Nia actually screams so loud Denise runs in from the bedroom thinking somebody lost a finger. They both end up laughing on the floor. And this is where most people would have quit. Nia doesn't. That is the first real win. Not because the machine is perfect, because it proves she is not crazy for trying. And then Mr. Larkin finds out she kept building after he discouraged the proposal. He catches her in the lab after school, sees the partial frame laid out on the bench, and asks, who authorized this? Nia says, the rules allow an individual prototype if it meets the milestone checks. He says, the rules allow a lot of things. That doesn't make them wise. She does not answer. He walks around the table, studies the wiring, and says the sentence she will remember long after everything else fades. You need to be careful. People notice when someone gets help they didn't earn. Now that is a slippery kind of accusation. Not direct enough to challenge cleanly. Not vague enough to ignore. She says, I built this. He shrugs. Then you should have no trouble proving it. That is the moment the story sharpens. Because from then on, she knows the competition is not just against other schools. It is against suspicion. And suspicion is harder to beat than a machine. She starts over-documenting everything. Voice memos at 2 in the morning describing why the balance algorithm keeps hunting left on uneven loads. If a screw changes position, she logs it. If she rewrites a control loop, she saves the previous version. If she burns her thumb soldering a motor lead, Zara takes a picture and says, "Proof of suffering." Nia laughs, but she keeps the picture, because deep down she senses something ugly is coming. And she is right. At the first milestone review, students wheel their prototypes into the lab for inspection. Caleb has a clean machine with polished side panels and a sponsor sticker on the frame. It looks expensive. It moves beautifully on flat ground. Everybody crowds around it. Mr. Larkin practically glows. Then Nia rolls in Maxine. Just raw metal, exposed cable braids, and a scarred claw arm with rubber grip pads cut from old bike tires. It is not pretty. It looks like a robot built by somebody who cared more about surviving the world than posing for it. Mr. Larkin looks openly skeptical. One of the seniors mutters, "Junkyard special." Nia hears him. Says nothing. When her turn comes, she places Maxine on a test platform layered with loose cinder blocks, sandbags, and slanted planks. The assignment is simple. Cross the terrain, lift a 10-pound payload, and return. Caleb's machine gets halfway, slips, and stalls. The duo team's robot loses grip at the incline. Nia kneels, enters a command string, and steps back. Maxine takes one cautious step, then another. The gyros twitch. The chassis dips, corrects, steadies. The left foot finds purchase where there should not be any. People stop whispering. The robot crosses the broken path, clamps the package, shifts its center of mass, and returns without dropping it. The room goes quiet in the kind of way that actually sounds louder than clapping. And then there is clapping. Even some of the students who do not like her clap because they cannot help it. You know that moment. When proof hits before pride can catch up? For half a second, Nia thinks this changes everything. It does not. Mr. Larkin folds his arms and asks, "Who wrote the adaptive correction layer?" Nia says, "I did." He asks how the load balancing threshold is being updated in motion. She answers. He asks what math she used to prevent oscillation. She answers that too. Then he marks something on his clipboard. That afternoon, Nia gets an email saying her prototype is approved for competition pending final verification of authorship and safety compliance. Caleb does not get that email. Neither do the seniors. Just her. Final verification of authorship. The words make her stomach drop. She shows Denise, who reads it twice and says, "Can they even do that?" Nia says, "Only if they already decided they can." And here comes the part that makes the whole thing personal in a different way. Denise has spent Nia's whole life teaching her how to stay composed in rooms that want her to crack. She believes in staying calm because calm keeps you safe. But when she reads that email, her jaw tightens. She says, "I am tired of people acting like your brilliance needs a witness to become real." That line stays with Nia because it names the thing exactly, as if what she built only counts once the right people recognize themselves in it. 2 nights later, she stops. Not loudly, not dramatically, just stops. That is how real quitting usually looks. She is sitting at the table at 113A. Laptop open. Maxine's leg assembly in pieces, when a compiler error wipes out an hour of changes and the motor response starts lagging again. Nia stares at the code until the words blur, then lowers her head onto her arms and whispers, "Maybe he's right." That is the darkest thought so far. Not that Mr. Larkin dislikes her. That he might be right about her limits. You do enough fighting and eventually the voice outside becomes a voice inside. That is the dangerous part. Then Denise, half awake, walks into the kitchen for water and sees her there. She just rests a hand on Nia's shoulder and says, "Do you need comfort or truth?" Nia lifts her head and says, "Truth." Denise nods toward the robot parts. Then the truth is, that machine does not look like failure. It looks like the middle. The middle, not the end. Not the proof of inability, just the ugly part between starting and finishing. It is exactly what Nia needs to hear. So she keeps going. And then everything should have changed. It didn't. A local news site runs a short feature on underfunded schools at the Invitational. They stop by Mason Tech for interviews. Somebody films Nia testing Maxine in the hallway. The clip goes online with the caption, "Sophomore engineer builds rescue robot from scrap materials." But enough to matter locally. Enough that people start rooting for her. Enough that Halcyon Robotics comments with a little gear emoji and impressive work. And if you think Mr. Larkin is happy that one of his students is getting attention, you still have too much faith in the wrong adults. The next morning, he stops Nia before class and says, "You should be careful about making claims publicly before adjudication is complete." She says, "I didn't post it." He says, "Perception matters." She says, "Only when it helps me?" That lands. You can see it in his face. For 1 second, the polite mask slips, and there is something uglier underneath. Because if Nia is real, then his judgment is exposed. And some people would rather destroy a truth than survive being wrong. But someone else had already decided she shouldn't win. 2 days before the competition, the sabotage happens. Just one tiny change in Maxine's calibration settings after school. Enough to make the balance response drift. Enough that during a late practice run, the robot suddenly leans wrong, jerks sideways, and slams its shoulder into the concrete. Nia kills power and kneels so fast she skins her knee. The casing is scratched. One sensor housing is cracked. For 10 terrifying seconds, she thinks the whole build is done. Then she checks the logs and sees an access record from the school lab terminal during a period when she was not there. You can probably guess where her mind goes first. Caleb. But that is too easy. And this story is meaner than easy. She reports it. Mr. Larkin says shared lab access means it could have been anybody. He also says, with that careful tone adults use when pretending not to accuse you while accusing you, sometimes students modify their own projects and then panic when they can't reproduce the result. Nia just stares at him. Because there it is again. The escape hatch. No matter what happens, the story can always be written against her. If the robot fails, she was pretending. If the robot succeeds, somebody must have helped. If something suspicious happens, maybe she did it herself. That is when Zara finally loses patience. They are in the hallway outside the lab, and Zara says what Nia has been swallowing for months. He doesn't think you're lying because the robot is too good. He thinks you're lying because he already decided what your talent is allowed to look like. Nia leans against the lockers. And the messed up part? If you explode, you become the problem. If you stay calm, he keeps doing it. So stop playing the version of this that protects him. That sentence matters later. A lot. Because on competition day, Nia makes a decision that changes the room. The state invitational is held in the Civic Center gym downtown. A raised demo field, built to mimic a collapsed construction zone. Piles of brick, rebar obstacles, unstable ramps, dust-colored mats, and one bright orange emergency package at the far end. Schools from all over the state are there. So are parents with expensive cameras. Industry reps. Judges. One of them is Dr. Elena Alvarez, a robotics systems engineer whose articles Nia has read at 2 in the morning while eating cereal over her keyboard. Another is Marcus Bell, former military rescue tech turned design consultant. The third is Professor Harriet Sloan from the State University. Nia wheels Maxine in herself because the transport cart wobbles and she does not trust anyone else handling the frame. Denise sits in the third row wearing her only blazer. Zara is beside her, already furious on principle. Caleb is across the floor in a fresh team polo, laughing too loudly with his group. Mr. Larkin is moving between stations with a clipboard and the look of a man who likes being associated with talent as long as he gets to define it. And if you are waiting for Nia to give some giant speech before the demo, that is not who she is. She just checks the leg servos, reseats one cable, tests the grip arm, whispers, "Please don't act stupid in public." That part is not engineering. That part is faith. The early rounds go well. One school's robot gets hung up on debris. Another drops the package on the return. Caleb's machine is fast, polished, and impressive until an unstable plank shifts under one wheel and the whole chassis has to be manually reset, which costs precious time. He is still a favorite, still smiling, still getting all the commentary about promise and leadership and composure. Then Nia's station is called. And before she can even begin the official intro, Mr. Larkin steps closer than he needs to. Too close. The microphone catches the friction in his voice. For transparency, he says, the school needs confirmation that this entry was independently built by the student presenting it. Everything stops. The judges look up. The audience leans forward. You know that feeling when a room senses blood before it understands the wound. That Nia goes still, not because she is weak, because humiliation has a freeze setting. Dr. Alvarez asks, is there a formal issue of authorship? Mr. Larkin smiles the careful smile of a man laundering an attack through procedure. Only that the complexity of this build appears inconsistent with the student's documented level. Student's documented level. You can hear the class in those words. The boundary. The insult dressed up as evaluation. Professor Sloan says, do you have evidence of misconduct? Mr. Larkin glances at Nia. That is what I am trying to clarify. Now the gym is fully with them. No side conversations. No shifting chairs. Just attention. The cruel kind. Nia feels it pressing down from the bleachers. Some people are uncomfortable for her. Some are curious. A few are enjoying this way too much. Caleb looks away, which somehow feels worse than if he smiled. Mr. Larkin turns to Nia and says into the mic, would you like to explain in detail how you built a dynamic stabilization platform beyond the curriculum you have completed? There are 100 ways to answer badly. There is only one way to survive. Nia lifts her chin and says, by studying what I hadn't completed yet. A few people murmur. Marcus Bell sits back, interested now. But Mr. Larkin is not done. He asks about the sensor fusion stack. She answers. He asks about terrain classification under unstable load. She answers. He asks faster. She answers faster. At first, it feels like she is regaining ground. Then he changes the game. He says, and where exactly did you learn to write recursive correction weighting? Because that concept is not in our sophomore track. Nia opens her mouth. He cuts her off. No. Let me be more direct. Did someone else write part of this code? A sharp little sound moves through the crowd. Shock. Delight. Second-hand embarrassment. All of it mixed together. Denise stands halfway up before Zara catches her wrist. Dr. Alvarez's expression hardens. But Nia hears only one thing. Did someone else write part of this code? It is such a loaded question because it is designed so that explaining sounds defensive and silence sounds guilty. And if you have ever been put on the spot by somebody who already decided the story, you know how quickly truth can feel clumsy. Nia's throat tightens. Her face burns. She can feel every eye on her. Then she remembers what Zara said. Stop playing the version of this that protects him. So instead of answering the question the way he wants, she turns to the judges. Not him. Them. And she says, calm but carrying. If authorship is the concern, don't ask me to defend it. Test me. That changes the room. You can feel the shift instantly. Because she is no longer begging to be believed. She is inviting verification. Real verification. Professor Sloan says, what exactly are you proposing? Nia says, ask me to modify the robot live. Any safe change within the competition parameters. Movement priority, grip response, recovery behavior, route strategy. If I built her, I can change her. Mr. Larkin starts to object. Dr. Alvarez lifts one hand without looking at him. Actually, she says, that seems reasonable. Marcus Bell smiles for the first time all morning. Now we're talking. And this is where everything starts to tilt. Because accusations sound powerful until they meet a standard. Nia plugs in her laptop with fingers that are steady only because panic has gone so deep it turned into focus. Professor Sloan chooses the first modification. Increase obstacle recovery after lateral slip. Nia opens the control interface. Explains the balance threshold. Adjusts the recovery weighting. Compiles. Tests it. Maxine responds. Clean. Marcus Bell asks for a second change. Reduce grip, crush force, but maintain package retention. Nia rewrites the arm response window, describes why the rubber pads compensate for lower clamp pressure, and runs the test. The claw closes softer. Holds. Releases. Perfect. Now people in the bleachers are whispering for a different reason. Not doubt. Recognition. Mr. Larkin's jaw is tight. But Dr. Alvarez is watching Nia the way real experts watch somebody who knows what they are doing. Carefully. Respectfully. Then comes the moment that blows the whole thing open. Dr. Alvarez says, "One more. Off script. I want to see how the system behaves if visual tracking is compromised." She gestures to Marcus Bell, who tapes over one of Maxine's forward sensors. The crowd leans in. If the robot fails now, the comeback dies right here. Nia swallows once. Then she says, she'll shift to proprioceptive correction and short-range terrain feel. Mr. Larkin says, unable to hide himself, if she can. Nia ignores him. She kneels by Maxine, enters the fallback command, and says quietly, "Find your feet, girl." That line gets a small laugh. Relief laugh. Human laugh. Then Maxine moves. Slowly at first. Carefully. The chassis tilts, corrects, searches. The covered sensor forces the robot to rely on alternate inputs. It feels the platform edges. Compensates. Steps over the unstable plank. Reaches the orange package. Grips. Returns. Not pretty. Not fast. But deliberate. Alive in that machine way that makes a crowd forget to breathe. When it reaches the start line, the gym erupts. Not polite applause. Real noise. The kind that comes out of people before manners can organize it. Nia stands there shaking. Not because she is scared anymore. Because sometimes the body cannot immediately tell the difference between terror and vindication. Mr. Larkin steps toward the table like he still thinks there is room to recover control. There are still unresolved concerns about prior assistance, he says. And that is when the judges prove it. Not by opinion, by details. Dr. Alvarez asks to see the source history. Nia turns the laptop. Local repository. Hundreds of commits. Months of iteration. Named in a pattern matching the engineering notebook timestamps submitted with registration. Professor Sloan flips through Nia's binder. Every hardware revision mapped. Every failure logged. Every recalibration documented in the same handwriting, same thinking, same messy but consistent problem-solving logic. Marcus Bell crouches by the robot and notices something nobody else has mentioned. The grip pads are cut from bike tire rubber and scored in a specific crosshatch pattern. He asks why. Nia says, because smooth pads slip under dust load and the tread channels grit outward under pressure. He grins. That's field thinking. Then Dr. Alvarez opens a buried configuration file. There, inside the fallback routine, is a comment line. Not elegant, just stubborn. Below it, another. For Mama's rent. Not something copied from a class template. Not something ghost-written by a mentor. The fingerprint of a person building under pressure for reasons bigger than grades. The room grows strangely still. Then Professor Sloan asks the question that ends it. Mr. Larkin, on what basis did you publicly accuse this student of misrepresentation? And you can see it happen. The collapse. Not physical. Social. Moral. His certainty has nowhere left to stand. He says something about safeguarding standards. About irregular sophistication. About responsibility. But now the words sound like what they are. Cover. Dr. Alvarez does not raise her voice. She does not have to. She says, sophistication is not evidence of dishonesty. Sometimes it is evidence that you underestimated the student. That lands harder than shouting ever could. The crowd hears it. Denise hears it. Nia definitely hears it. Then Marcus Bell adds, And if you're going to challenge authorship in public, you'd better come with more than disbelief. There is no applause yet. Just silence. That heavy, sacred silence that falls when truth finally has enough room. Mr. Larkin steps back. For the first time in this story, he looks small. Not because someone humiliated him, because he did that to himself. Now here is where a weaker story would rush straight to the trophy. But the deeper payoff is emotional first. Nia looks out into the bleachers and sees her mother. Denise is crying, trying not to, failing. One hand over her mouth. And if you have ever wanted one person to witness your truth after too many people questioned it, then you know exactly why that sight almost breaks Nia open. She does not cry yet either. Still not yet. The judges clear the authorship issue on record. Officially. Publicly. Dr. Alvarez says into the microphone, "For the record, we find no evidence that this project was misrepresented. On the contrary, the live modifications and technical documentation strongly support that Miss Brooks is the sole primary builder of this robot." There it is. Not whispered, not implied. Said out loud. In the same room where she was called a liar. That should be enough. It almost is. But the competition still is not over. That is the cruel beauty of moments like this. Vindication does not pause the clock. Professor Sloan asks Nia whether she would still like to run the full course. Nia looks at Maxine. Looks at the terrain field. Looks at Mr. Larkin, who cannot meet her eyes now. This is the moment that decides everything. Then she says, yes. One word. Steady. And if the whole gym was leaning in before, now they are invested. Because this is no longer just a demo. It is a reckoning. Nia places Maxine at the start line. Her hands are trembling now, but there is a strange peace under it. The kind that comes once the worst thing already happened and you survived it. She gives the command. Maxine starts. Across the first unstable plank, past the loose brick field, over the sandbag dip. A slight wobble at the rebar turn. Correction. Recovery. Forward again. You can hear individual breaths in the audience between servo whines. Caleb is watching hard now. Not smug. Just honest for the first time. Maybe realizing talent is not a speech. Maybe realizing polish and certainty are not the same as depth. Halfway through the course, one rear actuator hesitates. Just for a second. Nia feels her heart slam into her ribs. Maxine tilts. The whole gym makes that sharp inhale people make when disaster is 1 inch away. Then the adaptive balance layer kicks in. The body shifts. The weight transfers. The foot resets. And she keeps going. That little recovery gets louder applause than the clean sections because it means something bigger now. Not perfection. Resilience. At the far end, Maxine lowers the arm. Secures the package. Turns. Comes back. Not with the fastest time of the day, but with the cleanest recovery profile and the only fully autonomous return after live modifications. When Maxine crosses the finish line, Nia finally lets herself breathe. The sound that leaves her is half laugh, half sob, half disbelief. Yes, that is 3 halves. Big moments break math. The gym rises. Actually rises. People are standing now. Some cheering because they love underdogs. Some because they love truth. Some because they just watched a student get challenged in public and answer with skill instead of collapse. That stays with people. Mr. Larkin claps twice. Thin. Embarrassed. Then stops. Nia doesn't look at him. She is done performing dignity for people who never offered any. The scoring takes 20 minutes, which in a gym like that feels like an hour and a year. Students pace. Parents speculate. The sponsor reps huddle. Zara talks non-stop because silence would make everybody combust. Denise sits with both hands locked together so tightly her knuckles pale. At one point she says, "Whatever happens, they can never take that back." And she is right. That is important, because winning matters. But some victories happen before the trophy ever gets announced. When the judges return, the room settles fast. 3rd place goes to a suburban magnet school. Second goes to Caleb's team. There is surprise there. Real surprise. His machine was flashier. His school was favored. He smiles anyway, but it looks practiced now. Then Professor Sloan opens the final envelope. First place in the state invitational for technical ingenuity, adaptive performance, and outstanding independent engineering goes to Nia Brooks of Mason Technical Academy. For 1 second, Nia does not move. Sometimes the thing you have needed for so long arrives, and your body forgets how to receive it. Then Zara screams. Denise stands up so fast her chair tips backward, and the whole place erupts again. Nia walks to the front like she is moving underwater. Dr. Alvarez hands her the plaque. Marcus Bell hands her the scholarship packet. Then Dr. Alvarez leans in and says, "Just for her, do not spend another year shrinking yourself for people with small imaginations." That line will live in Nia for the rest of her life. But we are not done yet. Because the final twist is quieter. And in some ways, more satisfying. After the ceremony, while cameras flash and students crowd around Maxine, Caleb approaches. No entourage. No performance. Just him. He looks at the robot, then at Nia, and says, "I didn't touch your calibration." Nia studies his face. Believes him. He adds, "But I saw who was in the lab that afternoon." There it is. The second truth. The one that explains the sabotage. Nia says nothing. Lets him say it. Caleb glances across the gym where Mr. Larkin is speaking tightly with an event coordinator. Then he says, "I thought maybe he was checking safety settings. Then after your crash, I wasn't sure. I should have said something sooner." It is not a heroic confession. It is late. Incomplete. Human. Which makes it believable. Nia looks at him for a long second. Then says, "Yeah, you should have." He nods. Takes that. Does not defend himself. Sometimes accountability is not dramatic either. Sometimes it is just standing in the truth without trying to decorate it. Event staff later confirm unauthorized access records from Mr. Larkin's faculty login. There is an investigation. Nia is not in the room for most of it. And honestly, that is fitting. Because not every form of justice requires you to keep bleeding for it. She learns enough. Administrative leave. Pending review. A statement about policy and student treatment. People whisper. Parents email. The district suddenly becomes very interested in fairness, once fairness is expensive to ignore. But if you think Nia's favorite moment is hearing he might lose his job, you do not understand her. That is not the part she carries home. Her favorite moment comes later that night. The apartment is quiet. The plaque is on the counter because there's nowhere proper to put it yet. The scholarship papers are stacked beside a bowl of oranges. Maxine is powered down near the wall, looking almost ordinary in stillness. Denise reheats leftover rice and chicken because celebration food is whatever you can afford. After winning, changes the room but not the grocery budget overnight. Zara has gone home after taking approximately 4,000 photos. And Nia is finally alone with her mother. No judges. No microphone. No crowd. Just the kitchen light and everything they survived to get there. Denise sets 2 plates on the table, sits down, and looks at her daughter for a long time. Then she says, "I need to tell you something ugly." Nia, still raw from the day, goes very still. Denise says, "When you first told me you were going to build that robot, part of me was scared you'd be humiliated for dreaming in public." That honesty lands heavy. Because parents do not only carry hope, they carry memory. Every door that did not open for them. Every room that punished confidence. Every time being realistic was just another name for staying safe. Denise takes a breath. "I never doubted you were smart. I doubted the room would be fair. And I hate that those are different things." Nia stares at her plate. Feels tears rise for the first time all day. Real tears now. The private kind. Denise reaches across the table. "But baby, you did something bigger than winning. You made them watch you all the way through. They couldn't interrupt the truth once it started working. And that's when it hits. Not everyone gets belief first. Some people build it." Nia doesn't answer right away. She just sits there, crying a little now. nodding once, because some truths arrive softer than applause and land even harder. The room was unfair. It stayed unfair for longer than she could afford. And still, she built something that could survive inspection. Something that could answer back. Over the next few weeks, the story travels. First locally, then farther. A clip of the accusation and the reversal gets posted online. But what spreads is not the cruelty. It is the correction. The clip of Nia saying, "Don't ask me to defend it. Test me." People love that line. Teachers post it. Engineers repost it. Students turn it into captions, posters, stitched reactions. Because it names a hunger a lot of people carry. Not just to be praised. To be assessed fairly. To meet the standard, and have the standard actually count. Halcyon Robotics offers to honor the internship personally, with Dr. Alvarez requesting Nia in her division for the summer. The Community Maker Lab, which was about to close, receives a wave of donations after local coverage highlights how many kids built there because their schools could not provide enough. Mrs. Talbot cries on camera and blames allergies. Nobody believes her. Mason Tech's principal, who had previously treated robotics like a nice extracurricular for brochure photos, suddenly finds grant-writing energy from somewhere deep in his soul. Funny how institutions discover values right after public embarrassment. And Nia? She does what real builders do. After one day of sleeping almost 14 hours straight, she opens her notebook and starts sketching a new arm design. Because once you have seen your own idea walk across a room that doubted you, something shifts permanently. You stop asking whether you belong. You start asking how much farther you can go. That does not mean the hurt disappears. At school, some students become nicer because they respect her now. Others become nicer because they are scared of being on the wrong side of the next viral clip. Nia can tell the difference. She keeps her circle small, keeps Zara close, keeps her documentation habit too. Not from fear anymore, from discipline. She also starts mentoring a quiet freshman named Lena who loves electronics and apologizes every time she asks a smart question. The first day in the lab, Lena points at Maxine and says, "I don't know if I'm good enough for this stuff." Nia looks at her, then at the workbench, then back at Lena and says, "Good. Confidence is optional. Curiosity is not." That becomes another line people repeat. Because Nia is learning something most strong people learn the hard way. Once you survive public doubt, you become dangerous in the best sense. You stop organizing your whole identity around being accepted by the people who misread you. You build anyway. You speak anyway. And when the next kid walks into the room carrying talent nobody expects to see in that body, from that neighborhood, with that voice, you recognize them immediately. You make the room less lonely before it gets a chance to turn cruel. Months later, at the summer internship, Dr. Alvarez asks Nia what made her choose rescue robotics instead of entertainment systems or consumer tech. Nia thinks about the answer. About her mother's tired feet. About the utility notice. About the apartment table. About all the people who only seem to value invention once it comes polished by money. Then she says, "Because I like machines that help under pressure." Dr. Alvarez smiles like she hears the deeper sentence inside it. Machines that help under pressure. People too. That is what Nia became in her own story. Not just the girl who proved them wrong. The girl who kept functioning under conditions designed to make her fold. And maybe that is why this story sticks. Because almost everybody knows what it feels like to be underestimated in some smaller, quieter way. To say something true and watch a room hesitate. To make something real and feel people searching for the hidden hand that must have helped you. To be measured against an idea of yourself that was never yours. That is why the reversal matters. Not just because she wins, because the proof comes in the same place as the insult. Publicly. Clearly. In front of everybody. The room that watched her get questioned has to watch her be confirmed. The adults who expected explanation get demonstration instead. And the teacher who tried to reduce her to improbability gets exposed by the very standard he invoked. There is justice in that. But there is also something more useful. A blueprint. When somebody with power tries to make your truth sound impossible, Know your work so deeply they cannot hold the lie together once the testing starts. That does not mean every battle will end cleanly. It will not. But it does mean this. The strongest answer is not always the loudest one. Sometimes it is the one that can survive inspection. Sometimes dignity looks like refusing to panic on command. Sometimes revenge looks like competence with witnesses. And sometimes the most unforgettable moment of all is not when the wrong person gets punished. It is when the right person finally gets seen. Years later, people at Mason Tech still tell the story. Not always perfectly. Stories change shape when they travel. Some versions make Mr. Larkin crueler than he was. Some make Nia calmer than she felt. Some make the comeback sound instant, when really, it was built out of hundreds of tired nights no one filmed. That matters too, because what goes viral is usually the breakthrough. What changes a life is the work before it, the unglamorous repetition, the choosing not to quit in private, the middle Denise talked about. That is where most futures are actually made. Not at the podium, at the table, under weak light, with rent due, with doubt in the room, with your hands learning the shape of a thing nobody else can see yet. So if you picture Nia now, do not just picture the applause. Picture the notebook with grease on the edges. Picture the bus rides with metal parts in her backpack. Picture her testing the same unstable step 27 times because the 26th still leaned wrong. Picture the moment she almost believed the smaller version of herself someone else offered. Then picture her refusing it. Because that is where the ending was really born. Not when the judges spoke. When she kept building after being warned to stay small. That choice gave every later moment somewhere to stand. The victory, the scholarship, the internship, the investigation, the clip people still replay. All of it rests on one quieter act of courage. She built the thing anyway. And in the end, that is why the story satisfies so deeply. Not because a teacher was wrong. Teachers are wrong all the time. Not because judges were wise. Though these ones were. It satisfies because the person forced to carry the burden of proof actually had the proof. In her mind. In her notes. In her hands. In the machine itself. So when the moment came, the truth did not need drama. It needed power, process, and one clear chance to move. Maxine took that chance. Step by step. So did Nia. And if there is one image this story leaves behind, it is not the plaque or the headline or even Mr. Larkin shrinking under the weight of his own accusation. It is a young black girl in a bright gym, face still hot from humiliation, choosing not to beg for belief. Choosing instead to say, "Test me." That line is bigger than robotics, bigger than school, bigger than one teacher's failure of imagination. It is the line people reach for when they are tired of being explained away. When they have put in the work. When the room is finally forced to separate assumption from fact. Test me. Look closely. Measure fairly. See what survives. Because hidden strength stays hidden only until pressure reveals its shape. And on that day, under those lights, with every eye waiting for her to crack, Nia Brooks did not break. She built. She answered. She won. And the same room that heard her called a liar had to rise to its feet and watch the truth walk back home. If this story stayed with you, let it stay for the right reason. Not just because the comeback felt good. Because somewhere, somebody is still in the middle, still building under weak light, still wondering whether the room will ever be fair. Maybe they need this reminder. Keep going until your work can speak in places your voice was never allowed to finish.